everyone, and welcome to this edition of Phillies Talk. It's Phillies Talk Podcast, coming at you live after a World Series defeat by the Philadelphia Phillies. Terrible week we had here. Rich Baxter joined with Matt Veazey. How are you, Matt?
Hey, Rich. How are you?
All right. How good can I be? The Phillies lost the World Series, but I'm still trying to keep a positive spin on it.
It's like I said when they released Gene Segura. I tweeted this out on my Phillies Bell feed at Twitter. I said, "Don't be sad because it's over. Be happy because it happened." Something like that. So, of course, in the immediate aftermath, we're disappointed. That the Phillies did not win the World Series, but they weren't favored. They were the underdogs. They gave it a shot. They had some opportunities, missed some opportunities, and it's really hard to be. As the further we get away from it, it's really hard to remain disappointed. They had a tremendous run there, and they entertained us greatly there during the month of October into the early parts of November.
Yeah, they really did. It's been a godsend for this area, for Phillies fans, for baseball fans in this area, specifically Phillies fans. But yeah, it brought a new life to the sport in Philadelphia. It's been a while since the Phillies had been in the playoffs in general, let alone the World Series. 13 years since the last World Series appearance. And even though they lost, I think we gained something from it. We gained a national exposure to more fans. We gained to more players. A lot of players are drawn to World Series teams for one reason or another. We already saw a gentleman from Japan. I don't have his name handy, but he had said he'd love to come to the Phillies. And I'm sure that there's more players out there that would like to come to the Phillies. They think there's something going on in Philadelphia, and there is. $65 million coming off the books is what I read today over at NBC Sports Philadelphia, and that's a lot of money to come off the payroll. And I lost your audio there for a second.
Oh, sorry about that. The Japanese guy you're talking about is, I want to make sure I get my pronunciation right. I'll probably fumble this one, but it's Masataka Yoshida. He's an Nippon pro baseball star, and he's a big Bryce Harper fan. So that's always a possibility. I guess a lot of it's going to come down to, is there really a match there economically and position-wise? He's a corner outfielder at best, maybe a first baseman DH type, and we're already loaded with those guys. We don't know what's going to happen with Bryce as far as potential surgery, how much time he might miss. Will he be able to play defense in 2023? How much defense will he be able to play at all in right field? Him being able to play right field is really an important long-term consideration for this team, but we don't really know how his elbow situation, we should know more in the coming days, but we don't know how that's going to affect his ability to play right field in 2023. And then you already have a guy like Kyle Schwarber, who he might be able to play some first base, but he doesn't really have a lot of experience there. He's kind of like a Greg Luzinski type left fielder, or that's probably his best position, if not DH himself. And then you still have Rhys Hoskins here for now, who is, a defensive liability anywhere you put him. He's really a right-handed DH. So it's to bring on another first base DH left fielder type. It just doesn't seem like a fit, for the Phillies as much as he might idolize Bryce Harper. So I'm not sure about that guy. But when you say things like, it's very true, I believe, what you said, as far as it's important to make the postseason. It's important to reach the World Series, obviously. It does make you more attractive. And it was important just that they make the postseason, to get over that mental hurdle that it seemed like the entire organization had for the last 2 or 3 years, where they were, falling short in the final weeks of the campaign, when they had a legitimate shot at it over the last 2 or 3 years. So it was good. It was good, and it was important for them to actually push into October postseason baseball, and then to win the series. Multiple series. They won 3 series, in the playoffs, Rich. 2 of them against division winners who were rated higher than them, and another against a very talented team that was at least considered on their level in San Diego Padres. And all 3 of those series where they had to start out on the road. So this was a very important, I think you pointed out correctly, very important showing for them in this postseason to be able to demonstrate to free agents, to other prospective players who might be interested in coming aboard, that this is a legitimate ball club that is not far away, and possibly that player who's thinking of coming here might be the guy that can put them over the top, specifically looking at those shortstops now that they've, let go of, chosen, not to offer a contract to pick up the option on Gene Segura. There's certainly that's a obvious signal that they're going to be shopping in that free agent market for one of them shortstops. So you're right on there as far as the importance of making the World Series and how that is attractive to other teams and players.
Yeah, a guy like Trey Turner, for example, that his name keeps coming up with a lot of teams. The Mets. I saw an article somewhere where it had each available free agent and where specific writers thought that specific player would go to. And there was only like one big name free agent, so to speak, that one writer thought would end up with the Phillies. And maybe it will be a Trey Turner, but we were on a show last night, Mitch Bernstein's program, talking a little bit about the Phillies. He caught me off guard a little bit, and it's something I should have had a quick answer for, but he asked me a simple question. What do the Phillies need in the offseason? What's the biggest glaring deficiency that you can see that the Phillies would need to fill for the offseason? And why don't you take this one? Because I'm still second guessing myself.
They need a couple of things in my mind, Rich. One is I think that they need a veteran starting pitcher with a winning history, preferably a postseason history, but not it would be nice if they got a Jacob deGrom, or Clayton Kershaw, but I don't believe those things are realistic. DeGrom for financial reasons, Kershaw because I believe he's either going to go back to LA or go home to play in Texas with the Rangers. So I don't believe, fans. So there may be some fans out there who are maybe a little bit more pie in the sky and less educated about the circumstances who say, well, let's get DeGrom or Kershaw or Verlander or somebody like that. I don't think they're going to be going that route. But a starting pitcher on maybe a 1-year deal who can come in sort of like a Kyle Gibson, but if they can find somebody who's maybe a tick, better than a Gibson or a Syndergaard, a guy like that who they can slot into the number 4 spot in their rotation until Andrew Painter most evaluators and times that I saw him, he looks like he's not that far off. He is a legitimate top of the rotation starting pitcher. He's only 19. He'll be like 20 next year. But Dombrowski has already said he's not averse to giving a guy like that a shot in the major leagues. And, Painter on talent is certainly going to be the kind of guy who is able to come in here and win a starting spot in the Phillies rotation. Now, whether that's out of spring training or whether that's, by June 1st or the All-Star break, those would be the ideal situation. I think it'd be ideal if he came in and just blew people away in the spring, and they didn't have any choice but to bring him along as the number 4 or 5 starter. But I'd rather see them in this offseason get somebody in here who can fill that veteran kind of role behind Nola and Wheeler and Suarez. So I think that's a need. And then the other need, obviously, now if you're not going to be bringing Segura back, the obvious need is in the middle infield. Whether you're going to slide Stott over to second and sign one of these big shortstops, or the only other possibility I see is I think what you're going to see them do, Rich, that's a need. And the only thing that I think that you're going to see them do is they're going to go aggressively after one of these shortstops, whether it's Xander Bogaerts or whether it is Trey Turner. And I think that they're the two most likely names. Carlos Correa would probably be third on my list there. And I think that, that those are the three most likely guys that you'll see come here. So, they could, if they sign Turner, he's played second base in the past. They could leave Stott at shortstop and slide Turner over to second. I think they would probably do the opposite, but they're going to need a middle infielder. The only other possibility there I see is they shop in that free agent shortstop market. They can't make a deal with somebody, those guys pick somewhere else, or, they're not willing to make the financial commitment. And maybe Gene hangs out there as a free agent, and the Phillies decided to just, hey, we didn't get any of the shortstops. Let's go back to Gene and go back to our old setup of, bringing Gene back for a couple of years at second base and leaving Stott at short. So middle infield, especially now that Segura has been not offered a contract, then that's a need. And so is, I think, the starting rotation on a short-term basis. Yeah. The bullpen always needs figuring out, Rich, and this year started out as yet another, looked like a third straight year where the bullpen was going to be their undoing. And then suddenly, almost at the same time that Harper went down with his injury, the bullpen took off. Guys like, Dominguez came back. Alvarado suddenly got hot. Brogdon got hot. For 3 months there, the bullpen was a strength for this team. That's what we've been hoping for, waiting for a while. So it's hard to say, that they need to decide on, figure out that bullpen mix. But I see that as less of a priority. I think that the middle infield and that starting rotation, adding one more veteran arm in there, those are the two priorities to me.
Yeah, and I think Zach Eflin is leaving something on the table if he feels that he's still a starting pitcher. I don't think he is anymore. I think he was most effective for the Phillies in the bullpen. He's not, quote unquote, old yet, but I think he should rethink his career path as a starter. I really don't see him as a starter anymore. He solidified the Phillies back into the bullpen for them in the playoffs this year. And, that's what they need, I think. One of a couple things, and you hit on a shortstop, obviously, or second baseman. Stott was showing a tremendous amount of great play for a young player towards the end of the season with the Phillies. And he reminded me of a Larry Boa from the 70s and the 80s. Not quite as, feisty and fiery as Larry Boa, but somebody that was reliable. He got a lot of key hits for the Phillies and sparked the offense down the last few months for the Phillies offense. So I think he deserves to have a role in this, a big role in this. I think he's a future Philly star, a long-term Philly at that. But a starting pitcher, as you said, and we have over in the Padres, Clevenger became available. Sean Manaea is available. Those are the kind of pitchers I think the Phillies should look for to solidify that rotation. You have the Wheeler, the Nola combo, 1-2 so far. Suarez, as you said, as a third. You need the stopper. I don't know if it was Syndergaard. Don't know if he's prime time enough to be that stud fourth guy or tie for third if you need him. But you have Clevenger, Mania, um, and over DeGrom, I think is over the top for the Phillies. I don't trust him injury wise. He hasn't been reliable for the Mets the last couple years. Rodon is available also from the Giants. Whether or not he will be um, a guy that's affordable, I don't know. I haven't heard his contract requirements, but certainly should be a very interesting off season for the Phils. And let's not forget their sixth World Series loss of all time this year. But it didn't even affect me. I was happy that the Phillies were in it. It's not like I expected them to lose, but when it went back to Houston, I wasn't very optimistic, even though this club surprised us constantly, as you said, on the road. Nothing phased them. They just went out there and got the job done in St. Louis, then in San Diego. It was just like no problem from them. They just sailed through this postseason like a team that was, you know, some team that we really expected them to be at some point in the 22 season.
Well, they were 7-2, 9-2. I mean, they were 11-3 in the postseason at one point before they lost those last three games. And, like you said, it was a great run. There's not a lot more that you can say beyond that. They, uh, I went with my brother to game three, which was the game here at Citizens Bank Park, where they took the 2-1 series lead. They blasted a record tying 5 home runs. They won 7-0. And they, at that point, stretched their perfect home record out. So everything looked great at that point. And I really thought that there was a good chance that they could win the next 2 days and sweep the Astros out in 4 games. I apologize, 5 games, but by sweeping here. That no hitter the following day by Christian Javier really reset things for the Astros.
Yeah.
And then I think that obviously then the key became game 5, where the Phillies lost a nail biter. It was 3-2. They had opportunities. Syndergaard kept them in the game for the most part. But Verlander did finally come up with a good outing for the Astros in that game, and it was that was the pivotal match. The Phillies only ended up with 6 hits in that particular game. So I think that. And then they went back to Houston, and they had shots. They're in Houston in Game 6, but it almost seemed inevitable at that point that the Astros were ready to put it away. So I really don't have a lot more to say about the World Series, Rich, other than, it was a nice run. They fought really hard. I think that in the end, I think that, the better, more complete team, as they were being called, won the World Series. So now I'm just interested. I'm ready to move into the off season, and let's do the tinkering, the making the handful of moves that need to be made to make this team a legitimate division contender. Now, elevate this team from an 86, 87, 88 win team up to a 96, 97, 98 win team. And let's win this division, for the first time in over a decade.
Yeah, and I think that that's entirely possible. The Phillies had a terrible first 2 months of the season. April, May, it was just bordering on disaster. And then we saw Joe Girardi get the boot. This could have easily been a 95, 96 win team hadn't those things occurred earlier on in the season for whatever reason they did. But, from that point where Thompson took over to the end of the season was phenomenal for the Phillies. they turned the whole season around like topsy-turvy. Um, I'm sure there's going to be a book come out about it by one of the Philly sports writers. I haven't heard anything yet, but an 87 and 75 ball club were the Phillies, miraculously turning that bad start around. And it was a phenomenal run by them. It was just something to really be thankful for. And I always thought that this team was just a hair away from being that 95 win team if they could have fixed those problems earlier in the season this year. And maybe they'll do it next year, as you said. But interesting stat here from the World Series. The Astros are now 1-3 all time in Game 6 of the World Series. So they lost it in 21 to Atlanta and in 19 to Washington, to the Nationals, who, both of those teams went on to win the World Series. But unfortunately, the Phillies did not. So they couldn't keep that stat going, so to speak, to force that Game 7. And it's almost like, you know, the feeling to me around the Philadelphia area was the one that I get around Christmas time. It's a big buildup. Everybody's happy. Everybody's holding the door for people and saying, nice things to one another in the area. And then when Christmas sort of like the 26th of December hits, it's sort of like all that Christmas magic goes out the window, goes out the door, and it's back to normal business. That's the way it seems to me that the Phillies um, season went when the World Series was over to me. It was like that Christmas spirit left the area, that, the Phillies World Series spirit, so to speak, left. But that's just my opinion of it. But yeah, I was thankful for it. I'm looking forward for the season coming up, perhaps going to spring training now that, quote unquote, it should be normal. But yeah, very thankful for it, and looking optimistic for the future.
You made a nice analogy there for me, Rich, because I am a big baseball guy and I am I'm a Christmas guy. So here we are, we're just a little over a month away and I'm looking forward to Christmas. Usually this time of year, we're over a month away from the baseball season. The Philly season has been over for more than a month at this point. And we've been watching playoff series that didn't even involve them. So we're not as intimately involved in it. And I am now slipping into, even though it's only been, maybe 4 or 5 days, I'm slipping into postseason mode. I'm ready to start looking at prospect rankings. The general manager meetings were going on the last couple of days. In baseball, the winter meetings are coming up a month from now. There's going to be a lot of free agency. While teams were allowed to start talking to free agents on Sunday, this past Sunday, they weren't allowed to offer contract details, and they weren't allowed to sign anybody until I believe either tomorrow, Thursday or Friday of this week. So I'm looking forward to all the usual hot stove stuff now. The prospect rankings, the deals at the winter meetings, and otherwise during the winter, and then the holidays come, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then the calendar turns here in Philly. We got the Mummers Parade. There's a lot going on there. So when the calendar turns to January for me, that month of January is really kind of I won't say it's a down month at all, but it's kind of like that's my reset month. I kind of start to look ahead, to, as you mentioned, spring training. At that point, spring training is like a 4 to 6 weeks away. So January is more of a TV month for me. I'll catch up on some TV and maybe see what the Flyers and Sixers are doing, that kind of thing. But I'm ready to get into my off season stuff. It was a tremendously entertaining, exciting, fun, run, but it's over, and it's time to start looking to the future. You can only look back, for so long, and we'll have a lot of great memories from this, from now going forward. there will be reunions. We'll welcome Gene Segura back, 10 years from now for a 10-year reunion of the National League Championship team. So, those days will come. But right now I'm interested in, let's see what's going on for 2023 and beyond for these Phillies.
Absolutely. I think the future is bright for this team. Just going up to the Phillies.com website here real quick. I just wanted to bring this up on the screen. Maybe we can talk about this for just a minute here. It's 3 pressing issues by Todd Zalecki for the Phillies this offseason. He's bringing up the fact that Bryce Harper said after the World Series, this is going to be the same team next year with a couple more pieces, I would imagine. That's what Harper said. And he also has a quote here: John Middleton understands what we need to win. He wants to win right now. And also said Harper, I'd imagine that we're going to be the same team, but with some more pieces that'll make us much better. And that's what we were just talking about. The Phillies exercised Aaron Nola's $16 million club option for 2023. That's a big number for Aaron Nola, even though he's been great for the Phillies. Starting pitchers get that kind of money these days, and he's going to get it next year. So finally, his career is taking off. As you mentioned, Bryce Harper's elbow, is that going to be solved for the next season? And it worked out pretty good for the Phillies because he actually gave a spot to Nick Castellanos. Didn't actually pan out like some people were thinking he would, but maybe he'll become more comfortable in the Philadelphia area next year and work on that a little bit. And it would be something to have all these guys firing at the same time. And we talked about that during the season. Harper firing like we know he can and did. Castellanos picking it up. Schwarber picking it up. It's like a juggernaut of offense, this club, and we saw that during the playoffs some games, and we saw it during the season a couple times. But this is a team that's built to win.
Yeah, I don't think Castellanos. I don't think it's a question of. And I don't think there's anything much you can do about it. You said, maybe you can do a better job of being comfortable here in Philadelphia. I don't think it has anything to do with being comfortable in Philadelphia. I think it just has to do with he had a terrible approach, here offensively. I don't think it has to do with Philadelphia at all. This is a question of I don't think he's nervous. I really don't think it has anything to do with. I think if you asked him, he certainly would say that nothing to do with nervousness. And I just think he just had a bad year, Rich. I don't think it was nervousness. It might have been, some people adapt to their playing environment, to their clubhouse, to the team, to everything. How does their family adapt? But as a professional ball player, I don't think Philadelphia was a problem at all for Nick Castellanos. I think the problem with Nick Castellanos was Nick Castellanos. I think that if he can get to work with Kevin Long. And I'm sure, I'm not a professional hitting coach, so I can't even begin to tell you what his problems were. I mean, his swing seemed long at times. It seemed like he, was just terrible pitch selection as far as what he was swinging at. But why were those things happening? Kevin Long, I have faith in him. He's kind of a guru. He's kind of like a modern day Charlie Manuel as far as hitting coaches go. So I think they'll get him straightened out. Castellanos is a big piece, for 2023. We need him to be more of the 25 homer, 90 RBI, 280 hitter that he's been in a number of years in the past, especially the last few years before he came here to Philly. So, I have belief in a guy. One of my, favorite sayings, and I use it all the time about baseball, is I believe in the back of a guy's baseball card. So when I look at the back of Nick Castellanos' baseball card before this season, I believe that those are his numbers, and I think that this will be an anomaly. Nola, he certainly deserves that contract. He probably deserves a little bit more. As far as his standing among Major League Baseball pitchers, he takes a lot of grief from a certain segment of the Philadelphia social media crowd. But the fact of the matter is that Aaron Nola is one of the top 2025 pitchers in Major League Baseball. And he's in the early years of his prime. He'll be a free agent after next season. This is a guy who the Phillies must extend for the long term. When you're talking about financial expenditures that this team has coming up, you have to extend Aaron Nola. He's got to get like a 4 or 5 year deal if you can get him on that. And the one of the biggest reasons, Rich, is we're talking about what do they need to add to their pitching rotation, to make it better. Well, you can't add by subtracting, one of the top 20-25 pitchers in the game. So it may be a question of how much he's looking for. Does he really want to be here himself? Does he want to be here long term? Does he want to take a shot at free agency and go somewhere else? Those are all factors, but from the Phillies' perspective, I'm looking to tie him up long term, and I'm not looking to wait until next year to do it. That would be one of the things I'm looking to get done this winter if I'm Dave Dombrowski. Besides that, like you said, you talked about Trey Turner and all. You're looking at the middle infield. They came out. You said, something about the future. Look into the future as far as down the road. And they came out today, Baseball America did, a very respected resource with their updated Philadelphia Phillies top 10 prospects list. And the top 3 prospects right now with the Phillies are all legitimate pitching arm, top of the rotation, 2 of them big league type guys. All 3 of them have big arms. And we're talking about Andrew Painter, who we already mentioned, Mick Abel, and Griff McGarry. These are their top 3 pitching prospects. And the Phillies are going to be developing all 3 of them, including McGarry, as starting pitchers for now. The timeline from most scouts and most projectors is that Painter could be ready. He'll be ready at some point next year. Just a question of whether the team wants to push him to the big leagues at age 20. Mick Abel might take a little bit more developing, but in the long run, he might be an even better arm than Painter. These are 2 legitimate, 1-2 starters for the future for the Phillies as we move through the 2020s. And then McGarry might have a bigger arm than either Painter or Abel. He's a guy that can deal it up to the triple digits, but it's a question of his role now. That they're developing as a starter. His secondary stuff has come along really well. His command and control seems to have gotten better this year, especially in the second half of the year. And McGarry looks like a guy who has a real shot at being another rotation piece. So, ultimately they might not have to spend a lot of money in free agency on pitching. You consider that you have Ranger Suarez for a few years to come before he can be eligible for free agency. So, by the time Wheeler's deal runs out, you should have Painter, Abel, and McGarry, all ready to roll here. And if McGarry ends up being a back end bullpen piece at some point, lights out one, then so be it. But I'm really looking forward to these 3 because the organization really is not deep with prospect talent. They're still probably in the bottom third of Major League Baseball as far as overall organizational minor league talent. They do have 2 or 3 outfielders, who may have a shot to impact the big club, but each of them is a few years away. They have a young second base prospect, Hao-Yu Lee, who has a chance to be an offensive, second baseman a couple of years down the road. But these guys are young. The position players are young, and they're a few years off. It's these pitchers, Painter, Abel, and Griff McGarry, who really have a chance to. Phillies fans, if they don't know them already, they ought to look into them. They ought to get to know these names. These are guys who you're going to see at Citizens Bank Park My bet would be that you'll see Painter next year. You'll see McGarry next year. And there's a chance we might even see Abel at the end of the year, come September, although they may push him back a year rather than have three pitchers all coming along, the same contractual timeline. So I'm excited about these arms. Pray that they stay healthy, and that they turn out to be everything that they look like they are right now. But I think that that'll help save the team some money in the long run. And if they can get, and the extension with Nola that I think that they need, then you'll have Nola and Suarez going out for years to come, the next 3 or 4 years. And then these young guys can come along behind them so that when Wheeler's deal runs out in a couple of years, when he's reaching his mid-30s, you may be able to just, let him move along.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens, but that's long-term thinking. But we do want to talk about the future and long-term a little bit too, because it's exciting in that regard.
Yes, indeed. Well, check Matt's work out on the internet. You can find him at Phillies Bell on Twitter. That's his main spot there, and mine is at Fightin' Phillies, of course, on Twitter. And fightinphillies.com is the home of this podcast, Phillies Talk Podcast. And I want to invite you all out to baseballtalkradio.com. The 24-hour, 7-day-a-week feed is up. So all off season, you're going to get a 24-hour radio feed of the best podcast that I can find in baseball. And maybe I'll keep looking as well. But my show here, Gary Mack has a great Mets show. Subway to Shea. Ed Casputis over at Baseball PhD just got married. Sorry, Ed, you just got married. Congratulations, by the way. Great talk show there. So check it out, baseballtalkradio.com. And Matt, looking forward for the future. We'll be with the folks all off season talking Phillies baseball. And as usual, I can't wait to get talking about that even.
We did a little bit of it today, Rich. And, like I said, this free agent market's going to open up at the end of this week, and things will start rolling from there. It's going to be all rumors, at first. I doubt anybody signs on day one, but there are going to be some hot and heavy rumors with the Phillies as we move through November.
Yeah, we'll see if Dave Dombrowski can do it again, add another piece to the puzzle. As you said, that one little piece is going to put us over the edge for 2023. So glad you stopped by this show. Hit like and subscribe wherever you listen to this show from, and we appreciate you listening. Have a great day and take care, everyone.